percentage of it. So we have an angle hinge as you come through the ball. Now, why do we have an angle hinge? We have an angle hinge because the face is square, like this. Now, if it's square, it's wider. So if we're putting, we're not taking the putter, we're not twisting it as we putt. Okay, we want the club, even when it's swinging 100, for most of everybody in this room at 100 and something miles per hour, we're not going to go like that to the face. Okay, it just makes it hard to manage start line, and the bottom of the arc becomes narrower. Okay, so the more that this rotates, the bottom of the arc gets a lot narrower. Okay, we want it to be somewhat wider. So when I come through this, I would see that right through at P8, shaft parallel to the ground. Okay, the butt end of the club, if I use this as I did before, it's going to be right on my heel. So this is my heel stance line. The club's going to be right there. So it's like right on that line. So if some players are over here, that's a problem. It actually look like that if they did that. Right? So they're going to take away that and go to there. Okay? Shaft parallel to the ground. A couple of the things that you're going to notice, the difference between P7 and P6, the butt end of the club, okay, is going to be higher off the ground. So Mac used to say it's 30 inches relative to 40. And then he would say these are all approximations. I go, okay. You just don't want me to print that. So we have, let's just say it is 30 inches off the ground, depending on the club. And then as I rotate, it's not going to stay at 30, it's going to be higher. Okay? And we do that because your pelvis releases, your legs straighten, everything extends, right? So we look at P8, okay? Now, the cool thing from P8 is we also have rehinging rates, okay? So if I'm a low ball hitter, I'm trying to keep it flighted, I'm going to keep my left wrist uncocked. I'm going to keep the arc long. If I'm hitting it higher, I have more. I increase it, okay? Now, whether I agree with this or not, because I used to practice this, is I would come down, try to keep it wide, and as I hit the impact interval, I would kick my torso back and recock fast, try to get the ball high in the air, okay? And I shouldn't actually be doing that, come to find out, because there was a little timing element in there, but that was for like long air, to get the ball straight up in the air, okay? Throwing in that tilt late without getting narrow. Does that all make sense? Okay. And then we have, obviously, from P8, we have P9 into the finish. I won't get too much into that stuff. That turns into more vanity things. And if you're worrying about that, go play in a tournament. Okay? So that's generally what the P system is. Okay? Now, like I said, what I would do, and as golf coaches, you know, we have to make some choices and some hard decisions sometimes. We have, obviously, you guys are on the range for a long period of time. Every day, maybe take one picture out of one clip and keep it. And then develop a file system where you start filing away a lot of your data. Now, it's getting easier and easier where we have the, you know, these huge file, you know, drives that you can get for fairly cheap. You can start putting actual raw video. For me, I had to store stuff like on thumb drives years ago. And then, I moved it to a 1 terabyte thing. Now I have like a massive one, and everything just goes on there. And you know, I had to keep the tapes before and turn them over. So I think for what everybody should be doing is cataloging what you're doing, and start seeing a lot of these relationships. And you guys can develop your own preference. There's nothing wrong with that. There are people shy on that because it's in vogue to say it. And that's the truth. Okay, everybody says, well, you know, he has his own style. Well, there's some players I tell, not amateurs, but like really good players, I'm not going to work with that player. Sorry. There's no game because they're not going to do it, right? Sometimes they need more of a different coaching than technical, okay? So that's my recommendation. Okay, now I'm going to actually open this up for a little question and answer on mechanics if anybody has it. That's pretty much, you know, on the mechanics end. Before I get into the next thing, I'm going to pop that over so you guys can see. There we go. There we go. Okay. Whoops. Let me get back. You got it? Thank you. Okay. Back one more. There we go. Okay, so this was part of that P system. So you see that this is actually Charles the other day. Like I said, trust me, I just figured out how to do this the other day because I've never used this program. So you see how his lead wrist to left arm at P4 is the top left, P5 is the next one, right? So the left arm parallel to the ground shaft. So you can see how that doesn't look here. Okay. Now he doesn't feel like he's trying to let that out. That's just a natural occurrence. Now that came because in Charles's respect, Charles had too much extension at the top. He unweighed his right foot, jump forward, then go back, and then he had pull down on the handle. And when that happened, his wrist conditions were shot. And especially when he's trying to, that felt strong. So as you can see, he changed that, and so his wrist conditions changed. Okay, now he also has a little different movement on his hand path, a little bit. So his hands would actually go out and he'd go this way. So he actually feels more like Rory. He's trying to go like that. And he feels that, and the club stays almost in a straight line. And a wide belt. Okay, so you kind of see that. So a couple things that I'm looking for in this condition is, you can see at the top P4 position is how much of that extended. Okay, now these are just 2D situations. So how do we really necessarily blend this when we look at it from 3D? Remember earlier I said, how are we going to go from 3D to 2D? Okay. So he works with Rod Neal on his 3D. Okay, so Rob gets a report, and then he goes, okay, this is what your forward bend will look like. And your forward bend will look like this. He's like, oh, okay, that's what it feels like. And then he hits a golf ball, and he doesn't do it. So at some point, we have to find a structural feel, okay, and a 2D representation of P4, which is the top of that picture. So when he stands up there, and this goes for every player, mind you. So when he gets up there, and if he's doing, I'm exaggerating, a lot of this where he looks under-rotated and extended, hopefully that's what that looks like. I don't know, because I don't do that in my golf swing. Okay, to more rotated, more left bend, and more flexion. Okay, so that's what he feels. So once he does that, take a picture of it. Okay, keep that, and then when he goes and plays, somebody takes a picture of it, he's like, oh man, I'm on the other side of it still. Until that manifests itself into usable functioning movement, then you can't even go to the next section, which would be P5 and P6. Does that make sense? So that's a smart way. I didn't come up with that. Otherwise it'd be, might be smarter. But that's not that's basically the way of doing it, in my opinion, is I think a lot of guys come in and they go, wow, man, I can't do something, I'm flipping it. A lot of pretty good players say, well, I'm just flipping it. It feels like I'm flipping an impact. I go, okay, that's really interesting, but in your transition, you're doing that. I'm like, oh, you don't understand. I'm flipping it. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, flipping it. I go, that's just randomness. He goes, well, no, that's fine. Okay, that's fine, but let's see why you're doing that. And you have to kind of educate them why there's a trace coming down, right? So that trace coming down is picked up on 3D. It is. So we have a graph that's showing this, right? We have a graph that's showing this. We have a graph that's showing what your whole body is doing. So let's correlate a 2D picture and use both. And that's one of the things that I'm not seeing enough of, where there's no correlations, right? So the student leaves after getting 3D, and they kind of come out scratching their head, because I'm not that smart to do 3D every day. I'm sorry, I'm just not. I'm good at looking at pictures. So let's bridge them, okay? So when I see the left wrist go from narrow to wider, and it shows up on there, you can hopefully see that in a 2D video. Okay? So from that point, you can see also like the rate of closure aspects. So when I tell the student, like, oh well, not necessarily flipping it, you're doing this or this, or your hand speed is late, which is one thing that they might say. The repercussions of that would be like Brad Faxon, right? So, Brad was with Greg and kept saying, like, hand speed's late. We finally got it to a point where it was like, okay, well, Brad, here's the picture relative to what you're trying to do. And so we had, Greg and Dave, myself, and Brad all in one room. And they're getting the AMM, and they're really good at it, by the way. And they're getting the AMM report, and it's hand speed's so late. Okay, we're doing like baseball swings, trying to get this to widen out. Pretty soon he's like this, because he's like way over here. And really starting to get it, and then I'm just keep taking pictures of it. It's like, hey, we're getting there. Okay, you got it. And by that point, he was coming through the ball, and his wrist conditions were here relative to where he normally is. Okay. But that was a good experience right there because everybody kind of cohesively got together and said, okay, well, here's your 3D, here's your 2D, and here's some drills. And Phillips was like really good at that. It's only one of the things I think that he's really, really brilliant at, actually. So now the next slide is here, and we were talking about that quote unquote early extension piece. So here's a girl I work with, and you can see how she's up, extended. Shaft was really vertical before that point. She comes in, throws everything out. Now what's interesting is actually some good players played from there, right? So, yeah. So it's not like it's the end of the world, okay? So when you look at that picture, you're going, man, I'd really fix that. Well, she's actually won 5 tournaments this year from there. So I'm kind of like, and I have a lot of girls that actually kind of do that. I have a few that actually are on the other side of the spectrum, but I have more that are here. And I have a lot of juniors that start there, right? But after some time, you start getting more on the other picture where you see the lead or the trail femur, right? And your tibia and everything are this way. It's almost like your knees going this way. And that's kind of where Charles is there. And you see the pelvis open, shoulders open. His right arm should be more bent, but Rome was built longer than a couple days. So that's kind of the goal and the outlook. Okay. Now from that, it's pretty hard because people see a lot of this, a lot of the banking. So that ankle flexion going this way happens from the tibia twisting, not necessarily the linear component. It can happen, right? But you want to see that a little bit of flexion, a little bit of rotation, and then pushing for that to occur. Okay? So does anybody have any questions so far? Yes?
What's your preference with the left arm angle from P3 till P5?
So degrees inward from the left shoulder, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay, so depending on the club, it's a really good question. So it's not so ambiguous. It's not we were having dinner last night and we were chatting about it, and it's not just in, right? So let's say I have a 7-iron. Roughly with a 7-iron, it's going to be about 35 degrees in to 32 degrees in from the left shoulder. At P5, it's going to be inside 5 to 10. I don't want it to shift completely out to 0. Okay. I have preferences on right arm conditions depending on the player. So I feel that if the right arm shifts out too much, I have to introduce too much pitch, and I have to straighten the right elbow to lower the head. It's a little complicated to do that. And I love the picture of Mo. There's a reason why he was able to do that, because he did stand far away from it. So that's where he had his matchup. So he was really like this, and he could really do that. He had room, right? A lot of room, right? So is that pretty clear?
Yeah.
Anybody else, other questions?
If you would, wait till I bring a microphone to you so we can questions on audio.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Do I have 2 minutes? Yes, sir. Gentleman,
Hey, Dan. I was just curious, some drills that you like to work on to really kind of own the P3 position or P3,
Yeah.
P4?
Perfect. So one of these drills, okay, so kind of have your arms here. Okay, so there's my extension for me to raise my arms, right? I go back into flexion, and then I'm going to add this rotation, which is going to be, I feel like this. And I try to do a different order than what most people have seen. Some people have seen left tilt first. Problem is when I left tilt early, I extend. So I'm going to go into flexion first, and then I'm on the left side, then second, and then that pressure throws me back into center, somewhat. So we used to call that LTOP, the Lean Tower of Pisa. I don't know if anybody's heard that term. So, no. So yeah, the LTOP, Lean Tower of Pisa, was that one. Okay, good question. That's the main one. People feel the weight go over there from being pushed over there. That's why I like to do that. Any other? Yes, sir. So the, I guess, last question.
Just a quick synopsis on what the shaft angle and shaft location and hand path would be relative to those different arm, right arm positions coming down
Where and when? Like where and when?
as you're starting down, yeah.
Oh, it's starting out. Okay. So I can go in two different directions. So I can have a hand path that stays back, falls back, as long as the